to be alive in this land of ours. Good to drive in this land of ours.
Hello, Canada hockey fans in the United States.
The Hockey Time Machine.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hockey Time Machine. I'm Glenn Dreyfus. To spin a Howard Stern phrase, Rob Simpson is the king of all hockey media. At the rink, that's included play-by-play, analyst, and ringside reporter roles. He's hosted magazine-style hockey shows and appeared on NHL Network TV. Here's a peek at some of Rob's work.
What other uses are there for an octopus?
It's left up to your imagination.
Beep, 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 beep. Flight 619 coming in from Denver.
Rasta man, come to Jamaica, man.
Maybe some orange pico or some English breakfast or possibly some Earl Grey. What?
Oh! On the set of the USA's #1 hardcore hockey program. Well, it's actually the USA's only hardcore hockey program. With hosts the bodacious John Butchergrass, the Bubba-licious Barry Melrose, and the loquacious Neil Smith. There's the late, great Terry Sawchuk right there with some suitors, if you will, or suitorettes, I reckon. Look at this gal here hanging over the glass trying to give out her phone number. I'm in 619 at the Cadillac Hotel. Honey, what are you doing there? Her husband's got a nice hat. And of course, this lady down here at the end, she's kind of waiting in line. She's a little frustrated. Her arms are crossed. She's like, gosh, I wanted to give him my phone number. I'm spoken for, ma'am, but you are a nice-looking coog. Hey, that's my sister!
Welcome back to the city of brotherly love.
Leafs up!
For my money, nothing says commitment to the bit like an octopus on your head. Rob has authored 4 books, the latest one, the most recent, No Heavy Lifting, Globe-Trotting Adventures of a Sports Media Guy in 2018. His current media projects include 2 team-specific websites. SeattleHockeyInsider.com covers the Kraken, and 3 hours to the north, but just a click away on your mouse, Canucks fans can get the latest scoop from VancouverHockeyInsider.com. Too bad nothing interesting is going on with the Canucks this season. But let's say hello to the insider himself, Rob Simpson. Hi, Simmer.
Hi, Glenn. How are you? That was pretty entertaining. Thank you very much. That brought back some memories.
So, on page 46 of No Heavy Lifting, you reveal the secret that no one in sports media is supposed to tell. Quote, let me get this straight. We get a free pass to the game, we come in for a free meal, and then I get to interview players. Please, Rob, tell us it's not that simple.
It felt that simple because that took place when I was 17 years old, started covering the NBA at the Pontiac Silverdome. The Pistons were so bad. And by the way, I was laughing also because besides the Rastafarian with the octopus on my head, I had a tarantula on my head in Philadelphia for one of those shoots as well. That was what I was laughing about when we came out. When I was 17, I was covering the NBA. We had a high school radio station, and Bill Kreifeld, rest in peace, just passed a few years back, was the PR guy. The Pistons that season they finished 16-66. So nobody's covering the team. And Bill's like, you know what? This is a great opportunity to educate you guys, give you an opportunity to come to the games. So myself and my best buddy in high school, Rick Blacklow, and another guy, Eric Forrest, we became beat reporters covering the Pistons for the high school station. And then George Eichhorn, an intern or producer of the major sports talk show in Detroit started paying us under the table to get sound. So we'd be in the dressing rooms, talking to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, holding the record. Hey, Mr. Jabbar. And got started that way. So our experience was, oh my God, we're in high school. We show up, we get fed, we go watch a basketball game, and then we get to talk to Larry Bird. So it was unbelievable. And and at that point, I was playing sports to some degree also, but it was like, you know what? I think I'm going to do this.
Is this right? One of your high school radio interview guests was Mr. Hockey?
Gordie Howe, yeah. He was that's the only thing I really have in common with Wayne Gretzky is that Gordie Howe is my hero and his hero. And for good reason. I grew up in Detroit, going to the Olympia, seeing him play. And he was, a god to us. Or as Bobby Clark once told me when I asked him about him for a book, he said he was a god. From Manitoba, Flin Flon, Bobby Clark used to watch Western hockey, and Gordie was from outside of Saskatoon, and he was the man in Detroit. We had met him once at the Olympia when I was like 6, 7 years old by the concession stand after the game, hanging out. And I still have the autograph. I carried around my passport for a while. Gordie signed the inside the magazine. You remember the Goal magazine, right? They had Goal that was league wide, but then personalized. The cover was personalized for your team or your rink, and there was an insert with the lineups. Prior to that, there was something called Red Wings magazine. It was just this red and white magazine, and he signed inside it. I ripped that out at some point along the way and carried that around. It was tucked into my passport forever, and I actually still have that autograph. But in high school, I called their office in Hartford, or his home in Hartford, and he answered. And I was 16, maybe 17, and I was just like, and asked him if he'd come on this sports talk show that we did on Wednesday evenings. And he said, sure. And I can still remember sitting in the control room doing the interview with him and just blah, blah, blah. And he had to go. He had like another call with Disney, like some big promotion thing where he's going to make a lot of money. And here's me on the phone, the high school kid from Detroit. And I'm like, kept asking him extra questions. He's like, I gotta get off. But he was so polite and so kind that he never said anything on the air. He just went with it. And then I realized, oh crap, he's 5 minutes over already. I'm gonna get off this call. But I could have talked to him for another 2.5 hours. So it was a pretty remarkable opportunity to have that station, and then to have the pros in Detroit incorporate us kids. Super duper fast learning experience. And we had Sid Abel in studio to do that show, chain smoking. It's pretty funny. He smoked a lot. Eddie Jockman came in studio. Barry Bremen, who was the great imposter, he lived in West Bloomfield. He just passed away a few years ago. I understand there's an ESPN, one of those special docs on Barry Bremen. He came in studio. Pretty remarkable story, because he tried to fake being an NHL linesman at one point. And I think John D'Amico, he said, I'm going to go out and check the nets. And John D'Amico said, oh, no, you're not. And that was the hockey attempt didn't last as long as the football, baseball, or basketball one. I think basketball, he actually took shots with the all-star.
In warm-ups,
So that was pretty interesting. But it was a pretty amazing opportunity. And that was my first of many interactions with Mr. Hockey, and just an absolute blessing to have that guy in your life, even for, 10, 20 minutes at a time.
Well, Gordie must not have held your high school interview running long against you, because he made a cameo in a comedy reenactment of a press conference with Gary Bettman. Let's watch.
Oh, God.
And then you can tell me afterward why you're cringing. But first, the video.
And I assume that some of you may have a question or two.
Mr. Simpson. If you're meeting with the union, who decides who brings the coffee and donuts, and who decides what you bring if you're the guys that have to decide to bring the coffee and donuts? Do you bring Bear Claws, glazed donuts, Boston creams, or cannolis? And who decides who decides who decides?
We're going to talk about everything.
Mr. Fantastic.
In terms of improvements to the game, I was wondering about maybe putting a turquoise jersey on each team's leading scorer, and when a team scores a goal, we throw carnations. What's he looking at?
The short answer to your question is yes.
You in the back?
Is it true that when you're done milking the NHL for huge salaries that you'll jump back to the NBA, your first love, and take David Stern's spot when he retires?
The short answer to your question is
Hey, knock it off. It's not funny. A little more respect, okay? Please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Hockey.
Oh boy, get me in trouble 20 years later. So it was just wrong on a couple different levels, and Gary didn't like it. But actually, I don't even know if Gary ever saw it, because I've interviewed Gary. I mean, I don't know, a couple dozen times, radio, TV, whatever, in person, scrums. He actually did a wonderful shtick. The very first time I interviewed him, I was doing a thing at the LA All-Star game with Tim Robbins, and we finished that up. And then Gary did this unbelievable shtick, and it was amazing. But I have teased him on occasion, and that one he didn't say anything about. But John Shannon, my boss at the time, he said we're not going to air that. So that was, it aired once on Leafs TV that season. And I remember, I can say his name, Dean Bender. He's a wonderful guy. He was an executive there. I remember being in the lobby at Leafs TV, and he is just killing himself laughing. But then he goes, God, he's like, I don't know about this. And I was like, I don't know. It's funny. And it was before, I think it's Coors Light did any of that stuff. It was like the mock press conference. And and then John said, yeah, we're not going to keep airing that thing. So, and I don't know if it was because of the Gary or because it was Mr. Fantastic. It was because of the Gary, because Mr. Fantastic was just being silly. And the other thing is that guy next to me, we just recruited him and said, we're just running around at the last minute going, hey, after this thing's over, we're going to shoot this bit. And I think he was from Connecticut. I don't know who he is. I don't remember. He was very nice guy. He sat there as an extra. And then Gordy, who had actually ended up kind of before and after that doing 2 other appearances on that same show once a year at the All-Star game, he would wrap the show with me. So I would end every All-Star special with me and Gordy doing a back and forth. And then on this one, he did the elbow.
Was that as easy as just asking him to?
Well, yeah, because he recognized we knew each other enough where I said, Mr. Howe, listen, you do this thing. And I said, you don't have to do the whole interview. Can you just show up for 15 seconds and do this? And he's like, yeah, sure. So he came and did it. And the guy he was unbelievable. And you can understand why Wayner, I always call him Wayner, Gretzky is his hero, everybody's hero. I mean, it just gets you a little verklempt thinking about the guy. Yeah, I remember after a playoff game, I'd taken my in-laws and my I guess he'd be what would he be? I guess he'd be my nephew on the wife's side of the family downstairs to show him the Red Wings dressing room at the Joe. And we just happened to come down the steps as Gordy came around the corner, and he gets the kid in a headlock. I think his name, Brendan, he's got him in a headlock, and he's walking down the thing. And Brendan's like, what's going on? And he turns around, looks up, and there's Gordy Howe. He's like giving us the business, chatting with me and teasing the kid. And it was just like, God, this guy, what a beauty.
You didn't do Gary Bettman any harm. He's about to celebrate his 30th anniversary in the job.
Yeah, he's done just fine. And I was goofing around there because that was very early in his tenure. I mean, that was, not that early, but the shtick he did was about 9 years into his tenure. And this was kind of right about that same time. But I mean, I sat in studio in New York with him when he did his commissioner hour, the Gary hour, the commissioner hour, and we'd rotate. The host of NHL Live would rotate and sit there and we had a great time with Frank Brown. Frank Brown's the guy that was Mr. Simpson in the back. We dubbed over his voice. Frank's a great guy, and he retired a couple of years ago, still kicking around, and we used to have fun with Frank. But yeah, no, I've done a little bit of everything with Gary, so we should be fast friends, but I've kind of poked him a few times here and there.
Now, we got off the topic of your websites a little quickly, so I want to circle back. uh, visitors to your websites, among the things they can expect, besides articles written by you, interesting interviews. And Rob, count me among those who thinks, and I know you feel this way too, that Bruce Boudreau is better for the league when he's a part of it. In this next clip that you recorded for Vancouver Hockey Insider, the now former Canucks coach is contending not only with your barrage of questions, but also a projectile of a different sort.
He's been quite dedicated about everything he's been doing. And I mean, it might be something we start at the beginning of camp, and then we'll just see the comfortability. I mean,
Ooh, how about that?
All those things.
That was close.
Yeah, that almost hit me.
Almost got
Haven't even
beamed.
got on the ice yet. I'm getting whacked.
All right. Simmer's morning skate with Bruce Boudreau. Gabby himself almost got beamed during the interview.
That would have hurt the puck.
They're a little jacked up because they've been hitting the glass a hell of a lot more than they've been hitting the net, but they'll figure it out.
It's like minor hockey. Let's see how big a noise we can make, you know. And the parents are going, hit the net, and the kids are going, I wanted to go up top. Yeah.
That wasn't Jim Rutherford shooting the pucks, was it?
Ooh, wow, Glenn, that's a good one. No, it was during the Penticton Young Stars tournament. Winnipeg, Calgary, Edmonton, and Vancouver, which I covered from start to finish, covered training camp at Whistler from start to finish, covered all of preseason, wrote about 800 stories about the probably 2.5 to 3 per day, even in the June, July, and August months, covering the Canucks last summer off season, during the season, right up until the end of preseason, and then got banned. So I'm not, as the communications director told me, it doesn't matter who you're working for, you're not covering the team. So that's my current status. Haven't been told why yet. Haven't been able to figure that out. They've come up with a creative excuse, which insults everyone's intelligence on a regular basis, but it's fine because I just utilize the many contacts that I have to continue writing about that hockey club. And it's night and day because I'm sitting in Seattle right now, and I come down here, and what a unbelievable organization, top to bottom, and the PR communications guys are the best. Ben Guerrero, who worked in San Jose and Washington, is number one, and it's been delightful. And the community involvement, as you know from watching recently, the young kid they had the Make-A-Wish thing yesterday. I still need to do a write up on that. It's just one example of. It's just amazing, refreshing to be taking part in it and experience it. And obviously I have full access there, which is good because I don't have the background. It's a second-year team to have the availability to get into it. So it balances out. I use two different methods to cover the two different teams.
We watched the game last night from the press box, and my impression was Seattle was the cat and the Canucks were the ball of twine. Yeah. What is going on with the Canucks on the ice, off the ice, the whole thing?
Whew. What time is it? I mean, it's the roster build. Rutherford came in and hired Alvin, and they were kind of handcuffed is maybe an understatement, by the salary cap and what they had in place. And there's some overpaid athletes, and there's just bad chemistry. There's questions regarding commitment, I would think. I just remember Travis Green at the beginning of last season watching some of those games, and I was new to that team specifically, but I was watching every game and had been around and was at camp and all that stuff. And a couple home games in after they'd started on the road, and I remember going, are they trying to get this guy fired? And I said that to one of the other media guys. He's like, well, I think they like him, whatever. And I said, well, I don't know, but liking him, it's just a matter of this doesn't seem right to me. So weigh it out however you want. Salary cap, management, coaching. To me, it's on the players. And that core, for the most part, is still the core. So you went through Greener, out. Boudreaux boost in, lovey-dovey. Start over again, Bruce out. And now here's Rick Tocchet. You go from super duper players coach to kind of a traditional hard ass player who had, thousands of penalty. And I have no problem with that whatsoever. I love guys like Brendan Shanahan who had thousands of penalty minutes and hundreds of goals. No problem whatsoever. But you can go. I'm not going to go through the list right now because to do the roster evaluation of the Canucks, that's not why people want to watch this. They can get that 1,000 other places, but it's just been ugly. The PK stinks. These D zone stinks. Turnovers. There's a lot of fixing to do. They did sign Andrei Kuzmenko, the Russian, to a 2-year extension today for $5.5 per season. And you can argue whether that was too short or too much money or whatever, but he's producing and he's a solution. So whatever they get him for, they got him for, and that's a step in the right direction. And now they got to figure out what they're doing with Bo Horvat, where JT Miller fits in leadership wise. I mean, again, we could go down the list. There's some bad contracts they need to get rid of. So between now and the trade deadline, Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin are entering a very busy season.
Sounds like just a perfect time to be alienating members of the media.
It's bizarre. The only people really happy about that ban. I mean, I see no way if any of the 31 other teams, people that work for them, including coaches, GMs, and media, and all the broadcast guys who I know, would say, how does that benefit the team exactly? It doesn't. It's absurd. It benefits a small handful of guys in the media who don't want me around because I'd be considered competition and can do a lot of things they can't. But they got what they wanted. I'm not actively involved with on-site coverage, which actually in certain ways is a blessing in disguise because it's just like, whew. But at the same time, it's probably cost me tens of thousands of dollars not having that access. So while Bruce has been suffering publicly or was suffering publicly, I've been suffering privately for about 3 months. And again, no explanation.
But for everyone watching, VancouverHockeyInsider.com, Rob will give you the scoop. But speaking of coaches,
we'll try.
That's all we can ask.
That's right. And SeattleHockeyInsider.com. We're trying to cover them both, as you've already stated. Thank you.
You took a turn. Not too many people know this. You took a turn behind the bench briefly. Let's take a look at that.
Fellas, Gypsy, Doorknob, Blinker, let's have a good shift here. Let's go, hey? Rocco, Boxer, Slewfoot, you're up, nut. Goonsy, Flicker, I want you guys to get the puck deep. Let's rim it, all right? Get the rip done there. I want to see that runner spot around there. Forbesy, same thing for you, all right? Let's get this done. Good shift, Blinky. Gorney, fellas. Hey, Simmer, Potsy, Tito, good work out there. Excellent work out there. You gotta call that. What the hell you think this is? Creepers, creepers. You and
Oh boy. It's over. It's over.
Maybe that's why you got banned.
Oh, I don't know.
But what were you trying to let us in on with that clip?
It was just, we did travel logs every week. So that show was on the air for 4 years. That was the same one that had the Bettman shtick at the All-Star game. That was on for 4 seasons. And what was interesting, it was Leafs TV. And our show is Maple Leaf America. So we go talk to Hall of Famers, ex-Leafs, kids from Ontario playing in the minor leagues, you name it. We do a travel log every week. And because of the NHL lockout, weirdly enough, Maple Leaf America was the only show that could be produced because there's no NHL games. So all that support coverage around the regular NHL games was gone. So our little magazine show, bopping around the U.S. where there were minor league games being played, Hall of Famers out playing golf, we continued. So our show was on the air that 4th year during the lockout. And that particular season, that was in, I believe, Louisiana. And we did a Central Hockey League thing and it was called Maple Leaf America on the Bus. And that's actually where we got to know Brad Treleving, the Calgary Flames general manager, because he was the president of that league at the time. But we bopped around. We didn't actually physically ride the bus. I only really rode one bus, and that was the owner's bus, the New Mexico Scorpions and Corpus Christi Rays owner, our pal Dougie, unbelievably great guy. He rode us around on his like $800,000 bus for a portion of a show. We stopped in Vail. We had like unbelievable champagne. It was right around New Year's. But anyway, that bit on the bench, we didn't have a lot of time. We'd occasionally do some shtick. And the whole idea of the joke era was just the nickname thing. So it was all about the ridiculous fact that all these nicknames. And the coach and the Zamboni driver gave us one take. He goes, you got one take. We got to get these guys out of here, blah, blah, blah. So I go, all right, fellas. And I think it was the Shreveport Mudbugs. Maybe that was the team. And they sat there and I said, all right, here's what we're going to do. And we just did it. And I think I had on some of them, you can see me looking down. I think I had pieces of paper with names. I didn't have time to memorize them all. So I made up some of them off the top of my head. And the rest I had pieces of paper taped to their backs and was like, doorknob, blokesy, tweeter. And then started screaming at the end. And they played along beautifully. So it was fun. And I'd like to do that again in a more organized fashion where I could actually kind of clean it up a little bit, but who knows, we'll have that opportunity. We might actually someday have that opportunity.
You're talking about the minor leagues, and that brings us perfectly. You are the Sultan of Segway. Brings us perfectly into the show and tell portion of our show. This is I'm darkening the screen here, my Idaho Steelheads puck. And you called games for a number of years in the old West Coast Hockey League. Tell me about that. But first, tell me what the nickname was that people had for that circuit.
Oh, God. The WCHL, which is obviously West Coast Hockey League, they used to refer to it as the Western Cocktail Holiday League.
Tell me more.
Well, it was the highest paid guys, the highest salary cap of the AA leagues. So where ECHL, then called the East Coast Hockey League, they dropped the long version and just called it the ECHL, although it's all over the place. Was more prospecty, where the WCHL was more, you had Darren Veach, Matt Martin, who's a good friend of mine, former Leafs D-man, was in Idaho and became an assistant coach there. Unbelievably great guy who was on the 93 Maine National Championship team with Cal Ingraham, who was also a Steelhead, and also Paul Correa. The West Coast Hockey League, you could take your clubs. You take your club. That's unheard of in other leagues. Obviously, the NHL, you're not throwing your clubs on the charter, but we would take our clubs on the road. Bart Hull, Brett's little brother, Bobby's son, one of his sons. We got to know Blake and Bobby Jr. as well, but Bart was a brother from another mother, and we traveled around for 4 or 5 seasons together, commentating Steelheads hockey, radio on the road and television at home. Television and radio at home. It was pretty good. It was a high quality production, and we had a hell of a good time. And the other thing about that AA league is the quality of the towns. There was no, and I'm not going to offend cities that I've been to out in the middle of nowhere in the prairies, but it was San Diego, basically Seattle, because you went to Tacoma, which was a riot. Anchorage, which was a riot for a lot of different reasons. Chillicoot Charlie's, one of the best bars in North America. I don't know if it's still there. I assume it is. Phoenix, where we take our golf clubs. Tucson, briefly, where we take our golf clubs. Boise, which was a hell of a lot of fun all the time. So it was just a really fun circuit. And we were in Colorado briefly as well. Colorado Springs. Good fun.
Something Rob Simpson keeps track of, and I don't know if this is a marketable skill, but he knows how many airplane flights he's taken in his life. How many is it, Rob?
I haven't looked at the cards in a while, but I think it's, guys that have been in the league for 20, 30 years flying charters and all that would laugh at it, but because they've flown so much every year, but I think it's like 1,600. And it only counts ones where you take off and land. Because I've been on, I've jumped out of 2 airplanes, so those don't count. And then I've been on a couple helicopters in Hawaii, but it's around 1,600. And it just started when I'd flown a little bit when I was like 8, 10 years old overseas, and then started jotting them down. And then I was 20 something. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to keep doing this. And I just wrote them on the back of reporter cards. You get those little reporter flip things with the cardboard like that. Just the perfect size to go month, year, departure, arrow, arrival, arrow, whatever. And it just kept on doing it. And then count every 100 would mark it after 100 flights. And I'm up to about 1,600. And it was weird how the big numbers, the significant hits would be really unusual trips. Like there was an Australia in there on an even number, like, 200. There was a Jamaica like thrown in there at like 400. There was Russia at 1,200. It was just weird how it worked out. Or I flew home for the birth of my son, like at 900. It was really weird how the significant ones happened to hit.
Those jumping out of planes, were you doing your DB Cooper impression?
No, no. They were both for TV. That was the excuse. One was in Hawaii. And actually I had buddies from New York, Connecticut, Tommy Towers, and a bunch of guys were over there visiting me in Honolulu. And they're going, yeah, we're going to the North Shore to go skydiving. And I was at that time still a little skittish on the flights, which is funny. And I was like, there is not a chance in hell I'm jumping out of a plane. So they went off and did it, came back. Oh my God. I never thought about it again. And then fast forward, I'm transferring from weather guy to sports anchor at the CBS affiliate. Oh God. And I said, you know what, let's do this. And we took a camera on the ground. They put 3 cameras on their heads. We had 3 guys falling at once. And it was pretty amazing. And I called it transitioning from weather to sports by falling through the atmosphere. And it was pretty remarkable. And then did it again 3 or 4 years later for a baseball team. And I for Boise's Hawks baseball, and took the pitching coach and the hitting instructor, and they were petrified. And then, of course, once you get down, they're like, let's go again.
Yeah.
But I tweaked my back on the second one, so I won't be skydiving again.
A lot of those flights that you were there for both the takeoff and the landing were hockey charters. So when you're on those hockey charters, what do you observe? Do the players talk hockey? Are they anxious to do anything else besides talking hockey? What goes on those innumerable times when players are getting on a plane, getting off a plane, and in the air?
We don't interact. I mean, you really, unless there's some very specific reason, you don't interact with them. They're in the back, media and staff kind of in the middle, coaches, and if management's on board, they're in the front. So there's a clear delineation, and there's no interaction whatsoever other than coming on, coming off. And then if there's something very specific that you need to address, or you have an opportunity for some reason to talk. Otherwise, you're just doing your thing. The first year I was in Boston, I think me and 2 camera guys played the Mario Kart handheld every single flight, and it got really competitive, and it was a riot. And the flights went like that. Like, it didn't matter where you were going. You could be Boston to Colorado and take off, start playing, and you'll say, "Oh, we're there." So it's a great way that was a great way to pass the time. And otherwise, I'd sit next to our director Rose and watch movies and eat and chat, kibitz about stuff and whatever. It was fun. And then did that a little bit with the Rangers, and that was pretty much it for charter fun. But it's nice. You get a nice meal and you kick back, and for fans that are unaware of how it works, basically the best part is there's no airport congestion. So you bus onto the tarmac, load onto the plane, land, walk off the plane, get on a bus on the tarmac, and go to your hotel. That's the best part. There's no muss, no fuss for the most part.
Now, a lot of your miles were racked up when you pursued a project 31 games in 31 days. Tell us about this project and where it came from and what your memories of it are.
This came while I was hosting on Sirius XM Stella and Simmer in the mornings, and it was like a three-part, three-headed monster. It was to promote the radio show. It was which I did from the road every day, or every weekday, which when I was on the West Coast meant doing the show at 4 a.m. Did the show, sold my book that you showed there, No Heavy Lifting. I think I did a book signing in 8 or 9 cities, and then also raised money for Hockey Fights Cancer. That photo's in Carolina, just talking to fans. The league, and I just ran into Don Van Massenhoven, who's a supervisor now, the former referee. Just ran into him in Seattle a few nights ago. He was an unbelievable help. He made sure each and every night that the guys, the refs and linesmen, I knew a bunch of them because I wrote Scampy's book, and they're just a great bunch. And he made sure that every night they were ready with 2 pucks at the end of the first period. So in every building, first period ends, I shoot down, knock on the door, talk to security guy, whatever. They go, Simmer's here to get his pucks. I walk in. I had a referee from each game sign one of them and then give me a blank. Sometimes they'd give me a third one. I'd give it away to a kid. And then we mounted him, and we had a professional, this business in Toronto that does a lot of Hall of Fame stuff, built that 31 deal and sold it actually to a good friend of mine who bought the one with the signatures. And the money went to Hockey Fights Cancer. And then the second set of pucks I held on to, and I had offers for it, but it just kind of hung around. I kept it. And then I gave it to my nephew, Alec, for his wedding. I gave him something else too. Because his wife, I was like, yeah, I don't know if Pucks is going to get this done, but it's a substantial item. Like, I mean, it was expensive and it's worth quite a bit. And it's pretty cool. So he's got a game puck from every building, except for, of course, one that wasn't in existence yet. And it's mounted, and he has that exact thing. And it's 4 feet by, I guess it's like 3.5 by 3.5 by 4, with all the pucks from each place. So it was unbelievable. It was a ridiculous trip, and it was so much fun to brainstorm it. It took me about 3.5 hours. I printed the schedule in list form. It was in the summer, and I laid it on the ground. I'm on my hands and knees in my apartment. And I'm going, okay, I'm going through. Okay, so if I go to Minnesota, all right, check, and then I go through, and you have to. The problem is 31 and 31 and 31. You have to get to all the cities, and as you get near the end, sometimes you just run out. Like, you're like, okay, well, I need to get to Philadelphia, and they don't have a home game in the last 5. Screwed. Start over. So slide up just move a few dates ahead and start over and go, okay, let's go. And find a way to get to all 31 and 31. And there were 2 windows where you could do it. And I went with the earlier one, and it was November 16th, 2018 to December 16th, 2018. I started in Dallas against the Boston Bruins, and I ended in Boston 30 days later, because I doubled up. I went to an Ottawa game and a Montreal game on the same day.
I will ask you more about that, but I'm going to digress for a moment, because you're talking about pucks as wedding gifts. Reminds me that early in my marriage, to Katie, my wife, I wanted to hang hockey sweaters in our bedroom. And she said,
Good
you
luck.
Think that's romantic?
Right. Not good, Glenn.
No.
Yeah, you don't want to man cave your bedroom when you're married.
I didn't know that, but I learned it rather quickly.
Right. You're like, but honey, it's Dave Semenko.
Yes. Why are you yelling out Dave Semenko's name? It was a bad idea all the way around.
Bad idea.
Now, did you have any favorite rinks or favorite game day experiences?
On the 31 trip?
Yeah.
Oh God. They were all pretty amaze balls, as they say. Remarkably, I only almost had the one hang up. Like maybe this was a weird sign of certain things to come, because otherwise, like Vancouver's wonderful. I love it. I live there. My girlfriend, my just a lot of great friends, but it's just the weirdness. I think it's all has to do with the organization. But the two things that stand out is I did 8 or 9 book signings, and some of them really kicked ass. I had people like Columbus was unbelievable. They were lined up at an intermission. I think I sold every book in the first intermission, and they were lined up. And Nashville I did it, and Carolina went really well. They all went pretty well. But Vancouver, I was in a weird position. I wasn't on the concourse. There wasn't much traffic. I was tucked away in the back. It wasn't very good. And that was also the only time where I almost got hung up travel-wise. And it was only the 4th day of the trip. And I'm like, you are such a freaking loser. If you screw up 31 and 31, 31 on day 4, I mean, I had no control of it, but the airline canceled my flight. And I was going to San Jose. And I was thinking, oh no, this is crazy. So I was riding on the SkyTrain thing, like put it on my phone, figuring this stuff out. And I got there, and I think it was Delta it ended up being, and the guy was great. He hooked me up, and I actually got an earlier flight, arrived closer to where I wanted to go. And then went and ran into an old buddy of mine from the East Coast who lived out there, Tony Tyson and his little posse. And they put me up, and I did the show at 4 a.m. from like an outbuilding on their property. And they brought me eggs and stuff at 4:30 in the morning while I was doing the show with Gordy. So that was pretty amazing. That Pacific Division was tough, doing the talk show at 4 a.m. and then having to get on a flight, because I'd be at the game the night before, wake up at 4, do the show, get to the airport, fly to the next location. Yeah. Or drive in certain cases, not many, but certain cases. The hockey people, the whole bottom line for that thing was getting to see, and it had been a while since I'd quote unquote toured it, been around the league full on, because I was in a studio for a few years, just to see all the management people from every team, to see all the broadcasters from every team, was the joy. Like, you're just getting to run into everybody again, old pals and acquaintances, and just great friends and such. So that was the coolest part, was just getting around. Like Jimmy Nill and GM in Dallas, I said, hey, Jim, is it okay if I sit and watch a game with you and pick your brain? So I got to sit with him and his other managers and watch the second period, and just real cool education that way. And all the GMs were fantastic and helpful and all that. And you just ran into a lot of cool people. It was amazing. And no other travel issues. But some good hockey. I think the Oilers were the team I saw the most, just by coincidence, I think 5 times. And they weren't too happy with me, because I believe they ended up 1-3-1 in 5 Oiler games. And in fact, I talked to Peter Chiarelli in the press box somewhere, and then they fired him by the time that, I think, during the trip. It was either during the trip or right after. So that was a little weird. I was there for, I think I was somewhere for a coaching change during that trip. And then Pete got moved on too. Pretty crazy. A lot happens in the 30 days in the NHL. And I had a microcosm.
We are going to dive a little bit more into Stellick and Simmer in a moment, but I want to first ask you about the barns you didn't get to visit, the old rinks, the old arenas, the Chicago stadiums, and the old Boston Garden, and so on, that, depending on your point of view, were either charming or crumbling, and probably some of both, but unquestionably, they all had personality. Which of those old palaces do you miss?
I got to, I was obviously the Olympia quite a bit. and it was unbelievable. It was in a bad neighborhood. It was pretty, I remember this being a little kid, and there was a stabbing in the parking lot kind of thing. I remember being at Boston Garden one time, and it was a rough neighborhood. I was with a bunch of guys from New York, and I just felt like, at some point everybody's going to get in a fight. Like it was just, it had the mobile tracks, train tracks overhead, that kind of thing. At the old garden. One of the hard. I'm 6'6" and plus a little bit, so I routinely hit my head on things. Like lampposts, signs, drones. And I remember turning to get to these little seats in this nook and cranny in Boston Garden and just smashed my head into cement. Like literally, like right out of the cartoon. I'm seeing little birdies, but great building. So cool to be in there. And then just kind of the rough feeling around the neighborhood, which had changed dramatically by the time I actually got there almost 20 years later to work. That neighborhood had changed quite a bit. I was an unbelievable member of Chicago Stadium. My friend Bob Nagley, who him and his dad, it would have been Bob Jr. and our Bob is the third, had started the Minnesota Wild. And prior to that, on a cross-country trip that ended up taking me to Australia, we stopped in Chicago with the guy I mentioned earlier, Tommy Towers, and visited Bob Nagley. And he goes, "Hey, we're going to the Blackhawks game tonight." And it was at Chicago Stadium, and it happened to be Tony Esposito Glenn Hall night. I mean, talk about serendipity. And I just remember I didn't know anything about the anthem deal at that point. I was 20, early 20s. Had only been to hockey games, I think, at that point, maybe in Detroit, and some minor league stuff. The hair standing up in my, like the hair standing up in the back of my neck, tingly hair standing at arms.
They cheer all throughout the anthem, right?
It was insane. And that night in particular, because it's Glenn Hall, Tony Esposito, they're hanging out of the rafters. I mean, the place is just spilling out of the vomitoriums with people, standing room only. And it was electric. And they played the Vancouver Canucks. And I believe they lost 5-2. I think Vancouver won that game. Weirdly enough, Glenn, back when we were talking about covering the NBA as a 17-year-old and meeting all those guys, we actually also started covering the Red Wings as part of the same kind of deal. They sort of stunk also, and Bill Jamieson and Kathy Best gave us press passes because by that time we were pretty savvy. We had this high school thing going. We had the under-the-table pro sports talk stuff going. That first ever game was a tie. No, it was not a tie. It was I can't remember the score now. Darn it. Anyway, Vancouver Canucks and the Detroit Red Wings. And I still have the cassette tape with the sound post game. Crazy.
When was the last time you listened to that?
I cut a clip out of it when I got to Vancouver a year ago. And it's the goalie Corrado Mikalev talking about the Canucks. And he mentioned Stan Smeal in the cut. Sorry, but I kind of digressed there. So the Chicago Stadium experience was phenomenal and unbelievable. And I actually got to know Tony Esposito years after that. Rest in peace. Had a really cool experience with him at the Winter Classic in 2009. Never made it to Maple Leaf Gardens until it was cut in half and became part of the university. So only the roof,
right,
the same, and part of the upstairs. But I never got in there. Sadly, never made the Forum. Madison Square, yes, and serendipity again. Ended up seeing dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of games there as media, standing in the corner by the Zamboni with our friend Stan Fischler and many others, and then worked for a bit and kind of standing in the same corner. But prior to that, as a fan, first ever game at MSG was Domi Probert 2. And we were in the 6th row between the red line and one of the blue lines, and the fight was right below us, and it was just epic. And we were there to see the Red Wings. And Stevie Y on the bench after Probert beat the crap out of Domi, having lost the previous fight in Detroit. I think it was in Detroit. But we were there for it, and it was in the first 30 seconds. And Stevie Y's on the bench going like this, doing the belt. Yeah. And I remember standing there, and I looked at my buddies. I go, well, I guess we're just going to watch a hockey game, because like we were so jacked up and so excited, and everybody's so waiting for this fight, and it was unbelievable. You're just like, oh, you just kind of sat back and said, all right, let's watch this hockey game. Let's grab a couple of beers, because it was unbelievable. Domi Prober 2, and that's back when that stuff was just, it was prime.